Good afternoon, everyone. We will begin in 4 minutes. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this convocation for the general elections of the UP Law Student Government for the academic year 2022 to 2023. I am Marian Joyce Dakel, your host for the day. For this convocation, the candidates will be given 1 minute each to present their opening skills. There will also be a question and answer portion specific to the candidates based on the questions submitted online, answerable also for 1 minute. Follow-up questions should be answered within 30 seconds. You may still submit your questions on the provided Google form. The link is in the Alecom page and the Law Community Hub and is also being flashed in our screen. That's tinyurl.com/convocqge22. Without further ado, we will begin with our opening spills with our candidate for Secretary, Cavendel Klein Bacani. You have 1 minute.
Isang mapagpalayang hapon po sa ating lahat. Ako si Klein Bacani, tumatakbo bilang inyong susunod na LSG Secretary. Sa loob lamang ng ilang buwan naming pagiging mga mag-aaral ng batas, sunod-sunod tayong sinubok agad ng panahon, tulad na lamang ng mga nagdaang bagyo at mga pagtaas sa kaso ng COVID na talaga namang malaki ang naging epekto nito sa kondisyon ng mga mag-aaral. Dito natin mas napagtanto kung gaano kahalaga na maaga pa lamang tayo ay may ideya na kung ano ang mga posibleng kaharapin nating problema o sakuna. Maaga pa lamang tayo ay nagsisimula ng maghanda para sa mga ito at maaga pa lamang tayo ay nakakapag-inform na agad sa mga sangka-estudyantehan. Kaya ngayon, tayo ay tumatakbo bilang inyong susunod na LSG Secretary upang maipagpatuloy natin ang kampanya sa pagpapalakas at pagpapaigting ng boses ng mga mag-aaral ng UP College of Law, lalo na sa nagbabadyang pagbubukas muli ng pinto sa Malcolm, BGC at sa Iloilo. Kaya inyo pong tandaan, ang K na nagsasalita sa inyong harapan, Klein Bacani po ang inyong susunod na LSG Secretary. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you. Next is our candidate for treasurer, Victor Cesar Ubaldo. You may begin.
Good day. I am Vico Ubaldo, your incumbent BGC Evening Representative, and now running to be your LSG Treasurer. As our next LSG Treasurer, we are set on sustainability on the LSG's financial standings, efficiency for the system for fund management, and transparency of reports on the state of our coffers. On sustainability, by improving the state of the coffers through fund generation and streamlining the process for financial matters, we will maintain productivity and progress. On efficiency, by strengthening the coordination with the central board on projects in line for funding, we will be adequately prepared for proper and smooth project implementation. And on transparency, by regularly updating the central board with our current financial standing every General Assembly. Major financial updates will also be posted in our channels. So sustainability, efficiency, and transparency. With Vico, you are all set. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Ubaldo. Next is our candidate for third-year batch representative, Noel Francis Galinato. You may begin.
Maayong adlaw, UP Law. I'm Coco Galinato from Block 2G and I am running to be your third-year batch representative. The pandemic has deprived us of genuine face-to-face interactions, but the law school story is always founded on batch solidarity. Hence the question, how do we make up for lost time? As your next batch representative, I will work with you to help address these issues to make our stay in UP Law worthwhile. I envision a junior batch that's ready to meet the challenges not only of the coming school year, but also of the life beyond law school. My platform can be summarized into CRUNCH, C-R-U-N-C-H, consolidating basic services, building a unified batch, encouraging network development, and promoting collaborative communication and holistic development. Once again, hashtag CocoCrunch, Coco Galinato for third-year batch representative. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Galinato. Let's have our next candidate for third-year batch representative, Michiko Pearl Palaran. You may begin.
Good afternoon, UP Law. I am Michiko Pearl Mia Palaran from Block 2I, and I am running for the position of third-year batch representative. 2 years into online law school, we have faced various challenges, from registration to being updated, and even as simple as getting to know our batchmates. These are concerns that we have been facing for the past 2 years. As we enter a new academic year, we might be faced with a new challenge, and that is the possible holding of F2F classes. Putting all these together, I understand how stressful these may be. As your batch representative, I am mandated to assist you in these matters. I propose MIA, M, Mass Awareness and Communication, I, Integration of the batch, A, Adapting to the new normal. Worried about the upcoming academic year? Huwag mag-alala dahil kaya with MIA.
Thank you. Next is our candidate for second-year batch representative, Rowan Victor Libarios.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm RV Libarios from Block B, and I'm running to be one of your second-year batch representatives. My main projects that I want for all of us fall into the acronym RVL, or Recovery, Variety, and Learning. As batch representative, I want to ensure that either online setup or face-to-face next semester, we can move forward as one batch. In the face-to-face setup, as part of Recover, I want to provide a support system for housing through the use of a help desk or an infographic campaign for people moving to Diliman from elsewhere. As part of variety, my projects would focus on integrating us as a batch. Now, for most of our batch also that have never been to Malcolm Hall, as part of Learn, I want to reintegrate us back to campus through a digital campaign or an event showing us the ins and outs of Diliman and Malcolm Hall with the help of our seniors and some professors so that we can learn together. Thank you, everyone. Don't worry, online or face-to-face, RV there for you.
Thank you. Let's have our next candidate for second year batch representative, Luis Enrique Vida. You may begin.
I'm Luis Vida, running to be the next second year batch representative. For the past 2 years, we have pushed the limits and lived through the challenges of online learning. Today, as the likelihood of returning to Malcolm Hall draws near, we must ensure a seamless transition for our students. It's time for the batch to come together as one and foster a familial atmosphere amongst one another. The initiatives that we have had in the past have not been enough, and I put forth the challenge for us to make a more concerted effort in being there for one another. It's time to meet each other in the ways that we never did as a batch, because this is a task not only for me as your future batch representative, but also for all of us as one batch. Let's be the best batch we can be together. Let's all vote Vida.
Thank you. Let's have our candidate for evening representative, Madeline Krija Buwan. You may start.
Hello, everyone. I am Iya Buwan, running for the position of evening representative. My platform is anchored on 5 main points. FRESH. F for face-to-face classes in the new normal. This risk should not be compulsory. We would ensure that the face-to-face policy takes into consideration the needs of the evening students. R for responsive registration process. Preparation is key during enrollment. We would work on speedy transmission of student concerns to the admin. E for evening students' welfare. No one should be left behind. We would continue to lobby for the exemption from the 3-hour class policy and propose Saturday afternoon classes. S for solid evening UP Law community. I want to ensure that we build a solid support network, not just as law students, but also as professionals. Finally, letter H. I want to highlight open communication. Effective communication is key in every relationship. FRESH. Fresh. With that, good afternoon, everyone, and I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is our candidate for BGC Day representative, Lance Ryan Villarosa.
Hi everyone, good
You-
afternoon. My name is Lance Ryan Villarosa and I'm running for BGC Day representative. If you ask any of my blockmates and friends from upper years, they'd always wanted me to run since I was first year. And I'd always tell them it's a pass for me for many reasons. But I felt now was a perfect time for me to run. I realized I'll be fourth year next year. And I always felt that if you're a senior, you should always leave the school and your student body in a better position than it was when you entered. So I told myself that if I'm going to run, I might as well make something special. And I told myself that I wanted to create a culture in BGC that actually cares not only for the people within the school, but even for those around it. I wanted to create a culture that's empowering students, that you actually care for your students under you, and you care to create the foundation for that culture for years to come. And I believe ultimately that's what I envision for BGC Day and all the students within it. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's have our candidate for BGC Evening Representative, Samuel Joseph Anonas. You may start.
Leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. The relevance of this quote has often been an inspiration of mine. Good afternoon, constituents of the UP College of Law. My name is Samuel Joseph Anonas, running for the position of BGC Evening Representative. Hashtag Sama-sama tayo. To quickly highlight my leadership experience, I was an active student leader and athlete back then in my college days, culminating ultimately in my position as external vice president of our society. Now, as your BGC Evening Representative, my platform focuses on 2 main thrusts. First, to continue building and fostering pride in our community, which involves programs that aim to lighten, support, and accommodate our working students' needs. And secondly, to have synergistic activities with the BGC and Diliman Group. As highlighted in my tagline, hashtag Sama-sama tayo, hashtag Sama Anonas for BGC Evening Representative, ready to lead, ready to serve. A stronger, united BGC Evening community for UP Law.
Thank you. Finally, let's have our candidate for BGC Evening Representative, Rowan Palma.
Good afternoon, UP Law, especially to our BGC Evening community. I am Ro Palma, your incumbent for BGC Eve Block President, now your BGC Evening Representative in the LSG. Like the stormy seas, we will be navigating several uncertainties in the next academic year, which for sure will impact how we would manage both our law studies and employment. What I can bring to the table is experience. As someone who has been in the college for almost 4 years now, the first two under face-to-face and the rest online, where majority of these 4 years was dedicated to serving my home block. That being said, I hope you would consider me as your sailor. And together, let us work together towards a strong, independent BGC Eve community, one that is ready to adapt and respond to the uncertainties of the next AY. Rest assured, we'll do our best to prepare and survive as long as we remember to row your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Now that we have heard all our candidates, let's give them a chance to address the questions submitted by the UP Law community. To repeat the mechanics, each candidate to whom the question is addressed is given 1 minute to answer, and they have 30 seconds for follow-ups. The first question is directed to all candidates. The question is, in light of the continuing pandemic, do you think UP Law students should be given the option to continue with the current remote learning setup? Again, in light of the continuing pandemic, do you think UP Law students should be given the option to continue with the current remote learning setup? Let's have our candidate for secretary to answer the question.
Hello, magandang hapon po ulit. We need to understand first that each and every one of us have different situations. Magkakaiba po tayo ng pinagdadaanan ngayon. We have students who are experiencing problems with their families, with their incomes. Yung iba may trabaho sa kanilang probinsya, so mahihirapan silang makabalik. So given that magkakaiba tayo ng situation, I do believe that every student should have the option for a setup that is conducive and appropriate to their current situation right now. So whether it would be a hybrid or a continued online or remote setup, or if they want to provide or they want to opt for a full face-to-face setup, dapat mabigyan yung bawat isa ng option na nakaangkop sa kanilang sitwasyon. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's have our candidate for treasurer, Mr. Ubaldo, to answer the first question.
Good afternoon, everyone. So yes, I think UP Law students should be given the opportunity to continue the remote learning setup. And this is because we still haven't met the standards for us to be able to return to a complete face-to-face setup. And until those standards are met, I don't think we should make any recommendation that to require UP Law students to go to the face-to-face setup. The college has already been making this transition to the gradual transition to face-to-face classes through the retrofitting of the colleges. But until we see these standards being met, that we can all return back safely to the face-to-face setup, we will not make a complete recommendation that all UP students should go back to face-to-face. And I think we should have the recommendation to, we should recommend that students be able to continue the remote learning setup.
Thank you. Let's have Mr. Galinato to answer the question. You have 1 minute.
Yes, I believe students should have the option to continue remote learning setup. This pandemic has shown us that blended learning is a possibility, and that every student has different situations. There are some students who are in the provinces and might find it difficult to go back to NCR. Thus, asynchronous or online learning should be an option for students, while with the reduction of the levels of alert levels in Metro Manila, synchronous learning is also an option for students who may want to attend face-to-face sessions. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer. Let's have Ms. Palaran to answer the question.
Good afternoon. Yes, I also agree that the remote learning setup should be continued, or given an option, the students should be given an option to continue the remote learning setup. It has been proven that students are able to learn during a remote learning setup, and I think that safety protocols should be properly and thoroughly evaluated first. We also have to consider students who are in the provinces. We cannot mandate them immediately to transfer here in Manila and attend face-to-face classes. They need to make necessary accommodations and arrangements for accommodations and transportation costs. Given also with the traffic here in Metro Manila, we have to consider travel time. So there are a lot of circumstances that we have to take into account. So with this, I do believe that the current remote learning setup should be continued as an option for students. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's have Mr. Libarios to answer the first question. You may start.
Hello, thank you. I do agree that there should still be an option to choose between synchronous or asynchronous classes or online learning. I think the pandemic has shown us that people are situated differently. Some people have circumstances that make it very difficult for them to move back to Diliman. So actually, as part of my platform, as part of Recover, I hope to address the issues that people could have in moving to Diliman or issues that may arise for the student body in continuing with the online learning setup. So to summarize, yes, I do agree that there should still be the option for synchronous and asynchronous classes, and I think it's also my job as batch representative to help address the issues so that people can learn better, no matter if it's online or face to face next semester. Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Vida to answer the question. You may start.
My answer is yes, UP law students must be given an option to continue the setup, but obviously subject to certain considerations. Similar to what was already mentioned, there must be consideration given to those that are in need, such as those that are not able to secure lodging near the university, have different family setups, and the like. Hybrid learning, with some students opting for face-to-face classes while still being able to integrate those that are not able to, will be ideal in creating a more inclusive environment for learning. If it were to be required, however, the college must make the necessary notice and assistance for everyone because it is an issue that encompasses many different factors. The goal of giving one an option is to ensure that while not required, we're able to still cater to the needs of our students and adjust accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. Vida. Let's hear it from Ms. Buan. You have 1 minute.
Yes, I believe that students should be able to be given the option to decide whether they want to go back to face-to-face or continue with the setup right now. Taking into consideration the needs of the evening students, what I am proposing under my platform of F, face-to-face classes in the new normal, is a hybrid setup of a mix of remote classes and on-site activities. Until the college has implemented sufficient safety measures for transportation, for safe classrooms, safe libraries and facilities, and for affordable insurance, we cannot go back fully to face-to-face classes. Finally, we need adequate transition time in order to adjust and arrange accommodation arrangements or transfer to more feasible workplaces if needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, let's have Mr. Villarosa to answer the question.
All right. So my answer would be yes, definitely. It should be on the table. I don't think there's anything to disagree with the previous candidates when they said that we should always listen to the students. I think if anything, all of us have our own preferences, whether online or whether face-to-face. I was part of the last batch to experience face-to-face before going online, and I can really tell that there are differences in terms of learning, in terms of creating relationships with your blockmates that are beneficial if it's face-to-face. However, I do recognize that not all students are are similarly situated, and because of that, I think what can be done is that whatever policy that the administration pursues, it must be a policy that takes into account a comprehensive assessment of each situation of students. But most importantly, I think it's really the dialogue and the communication as to the developments along the way. And with that, I do think that the option, if anything, should be on the table and should be available to all students.
Thank you. Let's have Mr. Anonas to answer the first question. You may
Yes.
begin.
Yes, I believe that the student should be given the option to continue the online learning setup as well. For the past 2 years of the pandemic, we have established that we are capable of online learning aside from the standard face-to-face setup. So we also have to should we revert to the face-to-face setup though, we also have to give leeway and adjustment time, especially for the students that are in their respective provinces, to revert to the capital. Yes, this is something that I believe that should be taken care of and should be looked upon by the administration with the support of the law student government. Thank you.
Thank you. Lastly, let's hear it from Mr. Palma. You may
Y-
start.
I guess. Yes, I agree that the remote learning setup should still be an option. Although we're hopeful that we're already at the tail end of the pandemic, but there are still a lot of variables that have to be considered so that the next AY will be conducive for every law student. For everyone's information, the LSG has recently met with our dean, who had expressed who has already expressed that he'll be prioritizing the welfare of the students for the next year. He also expressed that he is more than willing to cooperate with what setup the students should decide be more conducive. With that said, I would like to take this opportunity to remind everyone to answer the sensing survey that our incumbent LSG is circulating in order to get a clearer image of what the student body feels would be the best for the next AY, and so that the LSG and the incoming LSG as well could make the proper recommendation to our dean. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Now let's move on to the second question submitted to the Google form. The question is, what can you propose for students who have to commute once F2F classes start, considering the limits in current transport system? Particularly, there's no P2P yet, and there's the lack of buses and jeeps, and there is an overcrowding in the MRT and LRT. Again, the question is, what can you propose for students who have to commute once F2F classes start, considering the limits in current transport system, like there's no P2P yet, and there's a lack of buses and jeeps, and overcrowding in the MRT and LRT? Let's have Mr. Bakani to answer the second question.
Hello again. For students who commute going to their campuses, what we can request the administration is for them to organize a shuttle service that will be exclusive only to those students who will opt for face-to-face classes. But with this setup, it is important that all security measures or all safety measures should be complied with. And at the same time, we should look into the vaccination record of each student to ensure that everyone is vaccinated as well. And this setup will also divert or will also protect these students from the cramped public transportation situation that we are currently facing right now, especially in the metro. So that is my proposal for those students who are commuting. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear it from Mr. Ubaldo. You have 1 minute to answer the question.
Hi again. So for this question, we will need to look at the particular needs and situations of each student who is going through this problem. For example, is the particular student's need more of financial assistance, through which we can address through solicitations? Is it through for a need for a shuttle service, such as what already recommended by the previous? Also, in connection with the previous question, it would also be really good that we still continue with the option of giving of allowing students to have a remote online setup. So we need to look at the situations of each student because this is a multifaceted question. And in order for us to be able to get to know what is the best solution for each student with this problem, we will have to do a sensing. We will communicate with them directly in order to help them out in the best way we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ubaldo. Let's have Ms. Palaran to answer the question.
Hi, good afternoon. For this question, I think that like what was mentioned, shuttle service can also be implemented in coordination with the administration. There could be specific pick-up points in different parts of the metro, and students who are also situated in similar areas and who also have their own cars can uh, can set up a carpool system within the students, either of the batch or of the college, or those who are along the route, they can also pick them up. Only, of course, if these students are willing to do so. And I think if it is also possible for students who are living in areas with tricycle, whose modes of transportation is tricycles, maybe they can also make a deal with certain tricycle drivers that he is the tricycle driver who will bring the student to certain points every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Palaran. Let's hear it from the other third-year batch representative candidate, Mr. Galinato.
So it goes back to the first point, first question on the availability of remote learning as an option. So number one, the answer would be to continue lobbying to the administration for blended learning option in classes for students that they may find difficult to attend due to transportation concerns. But number two, promote carpooling in UP Law through efforts of the LSG by gathering data on various location points of students and their willingness and availability to share their transportation to the College of Law. And number three, lobby for shuttle service. This is related to my platform for reintegration because in reintegration, we want to ease and smooth the transition of students from the online setup to face-to-face setup. Hence, we have to anchor it on promotion of blended learning, carpooling in UP Law, lobbying for shuttle service in the administration, and lastly, consolidating a list of accommodations close or nearby to UP Law for students who need to look for accommodation. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's have Mr. Vida to answer the question.
I agree with Mr. Galinato on his point on blended learning. This is being conducted by certain colleges abroad where there is a number of students in class and those in Zoom. In their setups, college rooms are outfitted with the appropriate number of monitors and microphones to cater to the needs of those that choose face-to-face and those that choose to attend class through Zoom. However, one proposal would be to have shuttle services to create a system that will most efficiently bring students from point A to point B. This is done in certain companies and has proven to be helpful. So it should also prove to be helpful with the College of Law. And another proposal will be having carpool systems for people that live in the same vicinity with one another, which are ideas that have already been mentioned by the previous candidates.
Thank you. Now let's hear it from Mr. Libarios.
Hi, thank you. So I agree with the other candidates here with their ideas of a carpooling system, of a shuttle system. And I will also push for those types of ideas. However, another aspect to solve this issue for the student body would be to help disseminate information about possible closer living accommodations. So maybe we could lobby to the school dorms for a cheaper price so that people could opt to stay in Diliman so that they would be able to skip this commute. Or also for some people who come from the provinces, maybe one form of support we can give them is information of how they can commute, of how they can get from point A to point B, which is the Diliman campus. So this could be in line with the other suggestions of a shuttle system, a carpooling system. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Let's hear it from Ms. Buwan. You have 1 minute. You may begin.
So not everyone can afford to go to the college using a private car or taking a Grab. With the current status of our public transportation system, we would be putting ourselves at more risk if we go through this route. So also, many evening students are already required to report physically to work. So transportation would be very challenging for working students. Under my platform for face-to-face classes in the new normal, what I am proposing is similar to what the other candidates have already said. So transportation assistance, which can be via a transportation allowance, a shuttle or a carpool initiative, or even additional time allowance for the commute of students. Of course, we should also still consider remote classes for those who have no means to go to the college safely. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Buwan. Now let's hear it from Mr. Villarosa.
All right, thanks. So, two things. Number one, definitely not going to disagree with what everybody said regarding the partnership with buses, jeepneys, and even opening the idea of having the carpool among students. So that's definitely something I'm open to, right? But I think what's important there is you need to have a constant stream of communication and consultation between students from far-flung areas, especially if they want to go to or if they're open to the idea of going back to the campus. So maybe also we can address or explore the idea of creating like a assistance fund or something where students can be given allowances for those who apply for them and for those who are being granted, right? So definitely not too different from what everyone else is saying. But number two, I think it's also a neat idea for us to maybe reconsider the amount of times we spend in school. So our class time, our class schedule. And because we're all open to the idea of hybrid classes, maybe we can spend more time online and maybe perhaps only an hour in school. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear it from Mr. Anonas. Yeah.
This is actually part of my platform, especially for the BGC evening students, to have the schedules uniformly pushed back to 6:30 p.m. Via a position paper that will be submitted to the administration. And its main purpose is for allotting time for travel, considering the current circumstances. I believe that the students can also reach out to the LSG in availing of these services, wherein there will be a point-to-point pickup transportation, which will be in its initial phase for approximately the first month and will be reevaluated based on the students' comments. And this will be the dry run initially for the first sem, basically. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, let's hear it from Mr. Palma.
If I remember correctly, just shortly before the pandemic, the UP Diliman admin was already consulting the community on a possible UP provided shuttle route servicing both the Diliman and BGC campus. So should our university do push for the return of face-to-face classes, we should look into rediscussing this option with them. But aside from that option, and I agree with my fellow candidates here that we should be consulting with them with our constituents on of their possible commute situation in order to identify where exactly the LSG could help. So, for example, if the BGC Eve community feels that they would be secure in a carpool system, this is where us, the BGC Eve representatives, could further assist in helping formulate said system. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. The third question that we have is addressed to all candidates. So you will be given 1.5 minutes to answer this question. So aside from the issue raised in the earlier question, what other issues can you foresee the student body would face if ever an F2F setup would be implemented starting next semester? And how do you plan to address such issues? Again, aside from the issue raised in the question earlier, what other issues can you foresee the student body would face if ever an F2F setup would be implemented starting next semester? And how do you plan to address such issues? Let's hear it from Mr. Bakani. You have 1.5 minutes.
Hello, yes. Coming from the province, I understand the plight of students, provincial students who will go back to the campuses, to the different campuses. And one major problem that we might encounter is the lack of housing, lack of available housing for everyone. So if the college will eventually decide to implement face-to-face classes for everyone, this is something that we should immediately look into and provide solution. One suggestion that I can think of is that we should be able to coordinate with the current USC because they have this initiative to collect the different scenarios of provincial students, and we can ask or we can provide a list of priority students who should be given priority for to be able to be provided housing within the UP community. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer. Now let's have Mr. Palma to answer the question.
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, although we're hopeful that we're already at the tail end of the pandemic, but we have several sources that are recently confirming a new variant. we have lots of mass activities on the street, which could lead to a possible transmission. With that being said, with regards to the pandemic, there are still several factors, especially if there would be cases that outbreaks would actually happen in our campuses. As such, my proposal is to establish a contingency plan, not only with our admin, but with our UP Law admin, but as well as with the BGC building administration, in order to make sure that we would be able to contain those possible outbreaks and also provide assistance to affected students, should it be through isolations, possible testings, and anything else that could further could further support the students in order to recover from COVID.
Thank you. Again, you will be given 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer. Let's hear it from the other BGC evening representative candidate, Mr. Anonas.
Thank you. First issue that I definitely foresee is definitely the risk and possibility of another outbreak, considering that not everyone is tested at least once a month. In terms of how to address this, I believe that we should be able to enforce stricter protocols in terms of the student tree on uh, uh, where we reside in the campus, respective the respective rooms. We have to enforce stricter security protocols and health protocols to address this particular problem. I believe that we should also lobby for the administration to have a monthly checking of the various security protocols, and to reinforce this in each of our daily activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anonas. Again, after the 1 minute marker stops, we will be giving you another 30 seconds for the follow-up question. Now let's have our candidate for treasurer, Mr. Ubaldo.
Good afternoon again. So as someone working in the healthcare workforce, I'd like to focus on health issues, such as if there's an outbreak. So definitely we may need to recommend return to a remote setup of learning. If somebody gets infected, we may need to provide financial assistance. If people still need to get health insurance, we need to ensure that everyone gets health insurance before returning to face-to-face. We need to make sure that there are safety protocols that are enforced heavily in all our campuses. And finally, something I'd like to add is, if necessary, we may need to do a monitoring of health status. This is something that we do in our workplace, and this is something that can really help prevent further outbreaks or any infection whatsoever. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ubaldo. Let's hear it from our BGC Day representative candidate, Mr. Villarosa.
All right, thanks. So 3 things for me. The number 1, health-related concerns, definitely. So we're talking about face masks, talking about social distancing. And I think in relation to that, especially with the BGC campus, we can adjust, or we can also explore the ideas of maximizing our very spacious and comfy classrooms, right? Because we only have about like 19 to 21 students per class. And maybe we can explore the idea of putting 2 or maybe 2 or 3 seats apart per person, because there really is space for that, right? That's one. I'm also G with the idea of a weekly health check. Super important too, so we can monitor the progress of our students and adjust our policies along the way. The second thing is for financial assistance, definitely on board with that. We can create a fund or a mechanism for students to apply to, and especially if they get infected and the entire family, gets caught up in the mess as well. Maybe we can explore that and bring that up with the administration. And lastly, we can also consider the idea of creating or easing people into academics for sure, because the online setting definitely is different from face-to-face. So that's why one of my platforms is creating this form of academic drive, so that students don't just go into law school blind. They already have materials that they can rely to. And I think the most important thing is you give first-year students and people early in their law school careers the confidence that they can stay and they can survive. And that comes with the help from their seniors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Villarosa. Now let's hear it from our candidates for the third year batch representative position. Let's start with Mr. Galinato. You have 1.5 minutes to answer the question.
So those who return to the provinces will also one of the issues that I see in the resumption of face-to-face classes is that number one, those who return to the to the provinces during the time of COVID and during the institution of online classes will have to return back to Manila and look for accommodations in Metro Manila. On my batch, since we never experienced a face-to-face setup, and just like me who came from the province, those who are from the province will likely have to look for accommodations in Metro Manila. So we'll have to address this issue by helping them look for accommodations in Metro Manila by consolidating nearby accommodations within UP Diliman and accommodations given by the university. Another major problem is the possibility of another COVID outbreak. So how do we protect the UP law community? We have to implement proper health guidelines, the proper ventilation in classrooms, coordinate with the UP Health Department to promote the use of face masks and proper protocols in cases where there are exposures in blocks. And lastly, students who have not yet faced or experienced face-to-face classes might have difficulty in adjusting to the face-to-face setup. So there might be difficulty in adjusting to the manner of teaching and the manner of conduct of recitations in the face-to-face setup. This can be addressed by an orientation seminar in order to brief students on what to expect during the face-to-face setup. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Galinato. Let's hear it from Ms. Palaran.
I agree with Mr. Galinato. I think I also see two problems in the possible return to F2F setup. First is with regards to health safety. So we are still in the pandemic. There is still the possibility of being infected with COVID. And the safety protocols, they are still on paper. We haven't tried them out as students. We haven't been in the college and actually see if the safety protocols being implemented make us feel safe enough. So if ever face-to-face class would be pushed for, I think that it is best to first go with a hybrid setup so that we can slowly evaluate if these protocols are already enough, if this already make the students feel safe. So we constantly need to check with the students if the protocols implemented are already okay. We have to also push for proper ventilation, access to alcohols and hand soaps, and of course, social distancing. The second problem is that we are the first batch of students who entered law school in an online learning setup. We have been doing this for 2 years, so if an F2F setup is to be implemented, surely our batch will need to adjust. The anxiety and worry will be there from traveling to class to how the class is being conducted. To address this, one of my platform is F2F experience sharing, where upperclassmen can share with us what F2F classes feel like. Thank you.
Thank you. Now let's hear it from Ms. Buan, running for evening representative.
I think what is important is that we understand how students are becoming more and more anxious now because of the uncertainty of the shift back to face-to-face. So we need adequate transition time before we go back to face-to-face. We need a definite stand from the admin for this. What I want is that the announcement should be done at least a semester ahead before implementation so that students are able to make the necessary adjustments. For those who live in the provinces or far away from campus, we plan to address this concern through the consolidation of affordable available housing near the campus. And if needed, we would also consolidate a list of employment opportunities for those who need to transfer to more feasible workplaces. Further, as already mentioned by the other candidates, we should prepare for a contingency plan for when there is another outbreak or an outbreak within the college. Many working students are already breadwinners, so the added burden of COVID costs can be a problem. We should be able to address these concerns through affordable health insurance or the provision of financial assistance if needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Buan. Now let's hear it from our second year batch representative candidates. Let's start with Mr. Libarios. You have 1.5 minutes.
Hello. So I see three possible issues that need to be addressed if we were to move back to face-to-face. The first would be reintegration for our batch, because we're one of the batches that were never able to experience face to face, and for some people they've never actually even gone to Katipunan or near Diliman. So for that, I think that one possible way to solve it would be to help accommodations for people who are moving from the province to Diliman. Second would be to help people know how to commute where things are. Specifically, a campus tour, a video of the campus tour, maybe a map or a guide where they could go, where they could eat, and where their classes would be conducted. And then on the second issue, be health, I think it was echoed by most of the candidates here that if we were to move back to face, there's always the possibility of another outbreak or another virus that would incapacitate a lot of people. So to solve that, I think that there should be health checkups conducted with with the block representatives, and to make sure that if an outbreak does happen, there has to be a flexible framework that can be conducted with um, the law school itself for how classes could be conducted, and some leniency for the students who would get infected. And the third would be preventative measures. So we should have protocols like frequent hand washing, social distancing, even if even if everyone is already vaccinated. Now the third issue is learning. So for us, we've never experienced face to face. I think an event where professors and our upperclassmen who experience face to face could help resituate us for face to face.
Apologies, but your time is up. Now let's hear it from Mr. Vida.
Other than transportation, another issue will be classrooms within the college. Surely it was mentioned already a while ago that there are a lot of rooms in the college, but there are still so many adjustments and safety protocols that must be addressed, such as strict social distancing, providing microphones for students and professors during recitation, and the clean as you go system. And lastly, a designated area or areas in the alfresco areas of the college or those with proper ventilation. An adjustment that can also be done to only have certain blocks have their classes in one room for the whole day that they're going to be reporting for face to face to limit the movement within the college. I will have to agree with contingency plans, for example, for when someone, for example, starts to get symptoms or even contracts the virus, contact tracing as well of students that will be entering the college is important. Students will be required to report their activities leading up to their face-to-face sessions. I will push for the strict enforcement of these protocols because the act of one may jeopardize the health of all. And lastly, to address the anxiety we will all feel coming back, part of my platform is testimonials of upperclassmen and tips for resit so that we can all prepare ourselves for what face-to-face classes will be like. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates, for giving or proposing your solutions to the issues that we may face once F2F classes are implemented. Now let's move on to the next question. The question is addressed to Mr. Klein Bacani, running for the secretary position. The question is, your stay in the college has been relatively short. What do you think makes you qualified to run for a higher position? Again, your stay in the college has been relatively short. What do you think makes you qualified to run for a higher position? You have 1 minute to answer.
Okay, thank you. Although I've been staying for not yet even a year, I do believe that I have enough experience to lead the LSG as your next LSG secretary. First, I have enough org experience. In my organization back in UPLB, I served as the public relations officer of my academic organization. And at the same time, I also served as the vice chairperson of the local student council of my college, the College of Arts and Sciences in UPLB. And right now, I am the incumbent first year batch representative. And we were already tested by all possible experiences. We have spikes in cases, typhoons, and even challenging communication with everyone due to the remote setup. And it made me realize that I can do so much more, especially for the Basic Services Committee, which is spearheaded by the Secretary. That's why ilalaban natin sa LSG ng isang LSG that will forward the voices of the students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bacani. The next question is addressed to all candidates. And the question is, what is the most important issue that your constituents face and how will you resolve it? Again, What is the most important issue that your constituents face and how will you resolve it? For this question, you will be given 1 minute to answer. Let's start with our candidate for BGC Evening Representative, Mr. Palma.
Upon my consultation with, aside from blockmates, with also other PGC evening students, one of the most basic issues that has been consistently raised every year is the access to basic student services. Even during face-to-face, under the face-to-face setup, the BGC campus does not have its own clinic or any health provider in the campus. As such, when we are going to prepare for the possible face-to-face setup or even in the hybrid setup, we're going to ensure that these basic services, such as health services, access to affordable and safe food, this will be provided not only to the BGC students but also to the other members of the BGC campus. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Palma. Let's hear it from the other BGC Evening Representative candidate, Mr. Anonas. You may
Thank you
start.
for the question. This is also part of my platform, which is first to continue building the UP-BGC community and to foster pride. It is one of the options or the advices that I received upon consulting with my blackmates and the incumbent BGC evening representative. I would organize a UP-BGC forum once per semester to give students an opportunity to voice out their concerns. That way, we'll be able to keep them updated on the LSG and as well as listen to their concerns and how we can improve as part of the law student government. I also plan to to utilize the UP BGC hotline forum wherein we can also receive anonymous communications from the students, as well as again we lobby with the administration for the pushing of schedules to allot for the transportation of the UPBGC evening constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anonas. Let's have Mr. Villarosa to answer the question.
All right. So for me, the most important issue would be trying to integrate students back into a face-to-face setup. And I think that encompasses health, concerns regarding finances, and the like. But I'd like to focus more on the academic side of it, because if you asked any freshmen to and sophomores, they've never been to a face-to-face setup in law school. My batch was the last one to experience that. So I think that that's why part of my platform really is trying to help integrate them, trying to make them feel that when they do go back to a face-to-face setup, they're not alone and they can actually survive what a lot of people call the toughest years in law school, which is your first few months in law school. So I think that the administration, if they do their part in communicating with the students in terms of health and finance related, I think that can take care of themselves. But I think my role especially would be to try integrate the new ones into law school more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Villarosa. Let's hear it from Ms. Buwan.
So based on my consultations with my blockmates and other evening students, I think there are two pressing issues that we need to address. First is the 2 subjects a day for evening students, and the other is the Saturday morning classes. So under my platform for evening students welfare, we would lobby for the exemption from the 3-hour class policies so that we would be able to avoid days wherein we have 2 subjects scheduled, plus the proposal that Saturday classes be scheduled in the afternoon instead of in the morning. We need to back this proposal up with data-driven recommendations so that the admin would listen to us. Another anticipated issue is the return service agreement, wherein scholars are required to render work hours to the college. So this would be very challenging, particularly for evening students who have full-time jobs. And lastly, I also want to propose an evening-friendly OLA. So consultations would be done with the student body and the admin so that we are able to come up with programs that could accommodate the evening students. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear it from the candidates for second-year batch representative. Let's start with Mr. Vida. You have 1 minute.
The batch sensing form that I sent out a week or two ago, The biggest pain point that was voiced out by my batchmates was the lack of camaraderie in our batch, especially. And I think that right now in law school, things are already serious as they are. And the lack of a better environment for everyone to just fool around, be friends, socialize with each other has been lacking in the past year. So, a way that I will address this is through games, even with the block, and providing incentives, and even having testimonials of different batchmates and their funny experiences in law school. The goal of my platform and my plans for the next year is to create a family within the next second year batch, which is my batch. And I don't think that there should be a need to make law school even more serious than it is already.
Thank you, Mr. Vida. Let's hear it from Mr. Libarios.
Hi. So when I consulted with some of my batchmates, I think the most pressing issue that everyone has in the back of their mind is this possibility of face-to-face classes. So majority of my platform actually is to make sure that we can seamlessly transition into a mixed setup where people can opt for face-to-face classes, and we can provide support for people who want to go to face-to-face classes. Meanwhile, for the people who can't go to face-to-face classes, we can still have an online setup for them. So a lot of my project would involve solving these pain points that people would have in going to face. And in line with that also, aside from the projects that I've already mentioned, I think I echo the other candidate in saying that we can interact more as a batch. So another one of my platforms is Variety, where we can have hobby groups and inter-batch integration so that we can foster this idea of batch solidarity. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Libarios. Now let's hear it from our candidates for third-year batch representatives, starting with Mr. Galinato.
Thank you. So the most important issue really for our batch is the transition to the face-to-face setup. Our batch has not yet experienced a face-to-face scenario in law school because we are the first batch that underwent the online setup during our first year. So in order to there are students who are from the province that have to go to Metro Manila, and our batch has been deprived of 2 years of genuine interaction with one another. And another concern with the transition that is subsumed in the transition is the anxiety and mental health concerns that face-to-face brings. So in order to address these issues, number one, my platform promotes for the consolidation of accommodations within UP Diliman and near Metro Manila. Number two, promote batch solidarity through projects that foster the development of teamwork and building relationships within the batch. And lastly, number three, promote psych-serve services to the students by making them aware of the accessibility of these services, how they may avail of them, and promote mental health awareness among the students in order to address these concerns subsumed under the main issue of transition. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Galinato. Now let's have our other candidate for third-year batch representative, Ms. Palaran. You may begin.
I also think that the most important issue that the batch faces is the possible transition to F2F classes. We don't know if it's going to be implemented or not, and the uncertainty truly causes anxiety to everyone. So I think that there are two things that we need to prepare for this is first, one's mindset, and two, the logistical needs. For the mindset, this is important because being back to face-to-face classes isn't the law school that we got used to. And we do not want to experience the same sudden change of setup or lifestyle that we did in 2020. So with this, I hope to put up a talks such as the F2F experience sharing where upperclassmen and alumni can share with us what they experienced during F2F. Also, we have to push for the early release of guidelines for the upcoming academic year so that students can make the necessary arrangements that they need for board, lodging, and transportation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Palaran. Let's hear it from our treasurer candidate, Mr. Ubaldo.
Hi again. So I agree with the other candidates, but I would like to mention specifically that our most pressing issue is the lack of concrete plans for the next semester. And this is something that was discussed with our meeting, recent meeting with the admin last week. So upon asking what the plans are for the next semester, we still do not have word on whether it will be allowed to have a hybrid setup or a full face-to-face setup. Moreover, when we asked for the timeline of how these decisions will be made, there was no proposed timeline that was given by the administration on when they will be releasing announcements or when they will be making decisions. And such things are very important so that all students of the college may be able to plan ahead on whether they will be coming back for the provinces, etc. And this is something that we need to address by always communicating with the college and also by communicating with their students, as provided we have the sensing form. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ubaldo. Finally, let's have Mr. Bacani to answer this question.
Yes, thank you. So one of the biggest issues or one of the most important issues for me is the promotion of the overall well-being of students. As the head of the Basic Services Committee, the secretary or the LSG should be able to establish an early sensing of the current welfare of the students, especially on the adjustments on three aspects. First is the academic aspect of students' life. Second, their health concerns. And third, their financial needs. Pursuant to these, I have 2 points in my platforms to further establish an early sensing on the current welfare of the students. And first is that in coordination with batch representatives, we can encourage discussions among the batches and the blocks ahead of incoming issues or events such as exam weeks, reading breaks, possible searching cases for them to have a head start on what is the current situation of the blocks or the batches. And second is preparation of surveys to assess the concerns and needs of the students, either through Google Forms or informal discussion sensing among the batches 1 week or as early as possible
Apologies,
before.
but your time is up. Thank you. Now, our next question is addressed to Mia Palaran, running for the position of third-year batch representative. The question is, looking at your profile, you have a lot of extracurricular engagements or commitments. If elected, how will you handle the tasks and responsibilities of being a batch representative effectively and responsibly alongside being a member of the organizations you are affiliated with? Again, the question is, looking at your profile, you have a lot of extracurricular engagements or commitments. If elected, how will you handle the tasks and responsibilities of being a batch representative effectively and responsibly alongside being an active member of the organizations you are affiliated with? You are given 1 minute to answer this question. You may start.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My current engagements, my extracurricular activities are currently under UP BOC and UP Porsche sorority. So these are the two other law school related engagements that I do have. I also work as a logistics manager of Project Lily. However, this is not a full-time job. This is more of a sideline. So with also, as you can see in my CV, I have experiences in my undergraduate years wherein I joined various organizations, and I think that I was able to perform well in these organizations while ensuring that my academics are okay. So with proper time management, I believe that even if I have other engagements, I can serve the batch as this is my mandate as your batch representative. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Palaran. Now, the next question submitted by the UP Law community is addressed to all affiliated candidates. The question is, how can you assure the voters that your loyalty will be with the student body and not with your fraternity or sorority? Again, how can you assure the voters that your loyalty will be with the student body and not with your fraternity or sorority? Let's have our candidate for the treasurer position, Mr. Ubaldo, to answer. You have 1 minute.
For this, I say that my priority is the UP student because I'm a UP student first before I am a member of the fraternity. With this, I'd like to be as transparent as possible in my transactions. And in order to be able to address these concerns, I'd like to propose that we be very open to feedback. Right now, we do have a grievance form in the LSG in order to get suggestions or advice or feedback on what our constituents want from us. And I'd like to propose that we remind everyone in the college to send us feedback, to criticize us, and all these will help us improve and help us serve all our constituents in the best way that we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ubaldo. Before answering the question, kindly mention your affiliation. With that, Mr. Ubaldo, can you state your affiliation?
I am affiliated with two fraternities. One is the Phi Kappa Mu fraternity, which is a fraternity based in the UP College of Medicine, and the other is the Upsilon Sigma Phi fraternity, which is a university fraternity.
Thank you. To all the next candidates who will answer the question, please do the same. Mention your affiliation first before answering the question. Let's have Mr. Galinato to answer the question.
Thank you. My affiliation is the Alpha Phi Beta fraternity. So my mandate as the third year batch representative is to serve the student body and always promote the interests of the students. My affiliation understands that when I decided to run for this election, my responsibilities will rest on the student body, and I will always have to promote the interests of the students. The LSG has a grievance mechanism in cases where the student government officers have broken the trust of the student body. These grievance mechanism will have to be enforced and be strengthened under the LSG's term. My track record as the block president of our block has shown that I always promote the interest of our batch, of our block, in cases in needs when they need. I always promote the interest of my block whenever there is a necessity to serve my block. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Galinato. Let's hear it from Ms. Palaran.
Good afternoon. My affiliation is the UP Porsche Sorority. So the mandate of the LSG as a whole is to be of service to the law community, to its needs, to its concerns, to its issues. The moment that I decided to run for the third year batch representative position, I knew that the mandate of this position is to be of service to my batch, to the students, and that my loyalty should be to the students. Because of this, I would use my position to lobby the concerns of the students, to forward their issues to the LSG and to the admin, and to ensure that this would be heard and hopefully be addressed by the LSG and the admin. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Palaran. Let's hear it from Mr. Libarios.
Hello, I'm affiliated with the Alpha Phi Beta fraternity. So to assure the student body, or at least the incoming second years, that my loyalty lies with my constituents. So I knew from the moment that I filed my letter of intent that I would put the premium on I would put the premium on my role as a batch representative rather than whatever conflict may or may not arise with my fraternity. So to assure everyone, I will always put my responsibilities and my actions as your batch representative first over anything that may be frat related. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Libarios. Let's hear it from Ms. Buwan.
I am a member of the UP Porsche sorority. As evening representative, my loyalty is to the evening community. When I decided to run for this position, it was because I wanted to serve the evening students as someone who has personally experienced the problems. Further, I believe that my experience in public service and in my career has shown that I have proven myself outside of my sorority. However, if there are issues in the future that would arise that would involve my sorority, I would inhibit myself from the investigation and ensure that there is always transparency and accountability. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Buwan. Lastly, let's hear it from Mr. Villarosa.
So good afternoon, everyone. I'm affiliated with the Sigma Rho fraternity. I think for sure, definitely, there, just like any of us here or who are affiliated, there will be opportunities that these fraternities and organizations will come to us. Definitely, for sure. But I think that I'm not just a frat man. I'm also a member. I'm also a law student, and I've been a law student for 3 years. And in that time, I've realized that I do have more responsibilities now if ever I do run. But I think what makes me different perhaps would be, instead of favoring my fraternity or anything, and really proving that my loyalty is for the batch, any activity that is proposed to me, I'd also want to partner with other organizations, other affiliations, for us to really get the best out of the intended activity for the student body. Definitely the student body is my priority, and I think just closing myself to just one would be the worst thing to do. And it's definitely a collaborative effort for all organizations in UP. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. The next question we have is again addressed to all affiliated candidates. And the question is, what are your thoughts regarding the Interfraternity and Sorority Council created by the COFS Committee of the USC? How do you think this initiative will address concerns of the general public regarding fraternities and sororities? Again, the question is, what are your thoughts regarding the Interfraternity and Sorority Council created by the COFS Committee of the USC? How do you think this initiative will address concerns of the general public regarding fraternities and sororities? Let's have Mr. Villarosa to answer this question.
Right. So, yeah, I'm definitely on board with the idea of creating the fraternity and sorority council, right? I do think that a lot of the times there's this notion of unfounded disagreements with affiliations, with fraternities, sororities, and other organizations, right? And I think if we just align ourselves with the idea that yes, we do have a right to organization, but we're also law students, and we all dream to become a lawyer. And if we're in a position of influence, then we need to allocate our efforts to really make projects and activities for the benefit of all the students. So I think making sure that all disagreements, or whatever they may be, if they are, or even suggestions for projects that can benefit the student body, are always done in it can always be best implemented if it's in a constant collaboration with everyone who can. And that's why I'm definitely open to this idea. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Villarosa. Let's have Ms. Buwan to answer this question.
I think the proposed Interfraternity and Sorority Council is a good opportunity for various sororities and fraternities to collaborate ideas and come up with programs for the whole student body. So regardless of affiliation, hopefully this initiative would provide different programs and projects that would benefit all students of the college. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Libarios, you may answer the question now.
Hi, thank you. So I agree with this initiative. I think it's good. It's really good to promote communication and dialogue among these fraternities and sororities. And while honestly, I'm not too familiar yet with this initiative. I think it's a good idea to foster collaborative efforts. And it shows that these affiliations are becoming more progressive, and it's a good opportunity for us to really lay down the hatchet and establish rapport and camaraderie between all of the affiliations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Libarios. Ms. Palaran, you have 1 minute to answer the question.
Hello. I do agree that I think that the USC Interfraternity and Sorority Council is a good idea. It can help foster unity and relationships among the different fraternities and sororities inside the university. And I think this is also a good avenue for students to be able to relay to the USC any concerns or apprehensions they have with the fraternities and sororities, and for the USC, of course, to relay it to the frats and soros, and hopefully to address these issues. This council can also be an avenue for frats and soros to unite to create projects that will be for the benefit of the student body. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Palaran. Mr. Galinato, you may start answering.
I agree with my fellow candidates that the USC Interfraternity and Sorority Council is a good initiative. It is important to foster communication and collaboration among the fraternities and sororities within the university. Fraternities and sororities do not exist in a vacuum, but rather they exist in the entire ecosystem of the University of the Philippines. Thus, this is a good initiative in order to promote and preserve the interest of the student body. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Galinato. Lastly, let's have Mr. Ubaldo to answer this question.
Hi again. So the IFSC was created in order to serve as an avenue for dialogue among the different Greek organizations. Prior to this, there was no formal way for the Greek organizations to communicate. And this is important because it leads us, the different Greek organizations, to communicate better and be able to promote peace better. Whereas this specific council was created under the USC and therefore will be subject to the same standards that any project of the USC will have. And therefore, the goals of this IFSC will be in line with the USC and make sure that it will promote the welfare of the UP student overall and not just to promote any of the selfish initiative whatsoever. So I agree that this initiative will definitely is towards progress and helping build peace and progress in the university. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ubaldo and other affiliated candidates for answering the question. Now that we're halfway done with the questions submitted by the UP Law community, let's deviate from the serious atmosphere and have a fun question addressed to all. The question is, what is your favorite law school moment? Again, what is your favorite law school moment? You have 1 minute to answer the question, and let's start with our candidate for BGC Evening Representative, Mr. Palma.
Hello. So is there a time limit for this? Okay. So there was this one time during freshman year where we had Revalida under Dean Mawis for persons and family regulations. So initially, she was very strict with not allowing anyone to go out if Revalida was ongoing. But it came to a point that I really had to pee. So she was reluctant at first if she would allow me. But then she settled that she would accompany me until the outside of the restroom. So in that instance, it was sort of like a wake up call. I guess that our professors are sort of mentors that we could actually look up to. And there's not much distance between us law students and law professors, especially if you and it eventually made me realize that these are the people that you would be hopefully colleagues with in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Palma. Let's hear it from the other BGC Evening Representative candidate, Mr. Anonas. You have 1 minute.
Thank you for the question. As part of my most memorable law school moment, unfortunately, since I'm a first year and what I've experienced so far is just online class, I'd like to relate it to the moment that I passed the LAE. I guess everyone would relate, wherein I was jumping for extreme joy because I didn't take any other law school exam. It's the first time that I think I felt genuine happiness, siguro. But yes, that's the most favorable law moment as of now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anonas. Let's hear it from our candidate for BGC Day Representative, Mr. Villarosa.
Okay, so I have 1 minute, so I'll try to make it quick. Okay, so I was under Sir Alfredo Molo for first year. And before the time we went to online setup, he asked our class president to collect all our email addresses. And at that time, I had like 2 email addresses. The first one was my DLSU back in college, and the second one was the new one I made. And, because it's just my personal, I just faced, it was the King Lance Ryan, right? Just a personal email of mine. So I was like, when my class president asked for emails, I just gave the King Lance Ryan one, right? Because I just felt that, casual, maybe just to send us some stuff for school. And then later, Sir Molo addresses everyone in the email. Sir Molo's this very strict professor, everyone respects him, but he's very strict. In first year, Consti 1 and 2, he was like, he replies to all of us. It was like, Who is King Lance? Please send appropriate email. I got so embarrassed and all my blockmates clowned me for that. So it's so funny and it's so memorable that people still point it out to this day. So yeah, definitely favorite for me. Never forget that.
Thank you, Mr. Villarosa. Now let's hear it from our evening representative candidate, Miss Buwan.
So I think one of my most favorite law school experiences was during first year in criminal law. I was under Professor Areza. So while reciting, instead of saying the word duck, what I said was duk. So it was during the time that Sir Areza was very serious. However, he laughed when I said that. So it was that moment that I realized that law school professors are also human. And also, I did not get any judgment from my block. Instead, it became a running joke until now. So I realized this was the moment that I found my family in law school and the people that I will be spending the next few years of my life with. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Buwan. Let's hear it from our candidates for second year batch representative, starting with Mr. Vida.
Hi. So it was in my first consti class under Prof. Bagro, and he had just opened his waiting room. And after he had opened it, I didn't know he had opened it already. I was apparently unmuted, and he was playing some background music, and it was like 7:30 a.m. in the morning, and I was singing along to this song called Castle on the Hill. And bumibirit talaga ako, for lack of a better term. And the whole class eventually heard it. And even my professor commented after, saying that it seems like I'm having a good morning. So I think that was probably the best experience I've had so far, because it taught me to laugh once in a while in law school.
Thank you, Mr. Vida. Let's hear it from the other second year batch representative candidate, Mr. Libarios.
So my favorite memory in law school so far is actually one of our first block bondings that we had over Christmas, where we had a Christmas party and we had like a small funny awarding ceremony. So in that, we all just gathered in one place and we kind of just got to know each other, and we found out, uy, ang tangkad mo pala. You look so tall pala in Zoom, no? And it was the first time we actually saw each other outside of the online setup. So it's one of my favorite memories so far, because there I got to meet in person and bond with my blockmates who I know I'll stay with until the end. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Libarios. Let's have our third year batch representative candidates to answer the question. Let's start with Mr. Galinato.
So my favorite law school moment would be our first block online Christmas party during our first year, because it made me realize that you are able to build strong friendships or good friendships despite the online setup. Despite not having met these people personally face to face, we were able to bond and we were able to share stories with one another. We played games and we were sharing stories even up to 3 a.m. And during that time, it was also the time when some of my blockmates who were not that who did not really share stories during classes or are not so active in group chats, shared stories and interacted with us during the Christmas party. So it was a very good memory for me, and surely that's my favorite law school moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Galinato. Let's hear it from the other third year batch representative candidate, Ms. Palaran.
My favorite law school moment was my first recit ever. So of course, as everyone is, I was so scared and nervous. And then I was already called. I was already reciting a few sentences. And then suddenly there was a brownout here at home. So I was so scared because I thought that the prof would give me a cinco or reprimand me. But like he was very patient and said he would wait for me. And then when I came back, I continued my recitation. And after the recitation, he even commended me. So it was that time that I realized that law school may be not as scary as people describe it to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Palaran. Let's have our candidate for the treasurer position, Mr. Ubaldo.
Hi again. So mine's just a short moment. So one of our professors, he's quite strict or more poker face talaga, as in he's never gonna smile in class or will never laugh. And then he asked me a question. It was a side question, and the way I answered it was quite funny. It was I almost made a joke, and I saw my blockmates were trying to hold their laughter, but then our professor still didn't smile, didn't do anything. I don't know. I don't have a lot of memories so far, but this is so far this is so far something memorable for me because I tried to make my professor laugh. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Ubaldo. Lastly, let's hear it from our candidate for the secretary position, Mr. Bacani.
Hello, thank you. So it just happened this semester, and it's under Prof. TLV's Constitutional Law 2 class. We watched the 10-minute version of Taylor Swift's All Too Well, and never in my wildest dreams have I imagined that I'll be watching Taylor Swift's music video as part of a law class. But I'm thankful. I'm really thankful to Prof. TLV for that unconventional learning experience and for giving us a fresh take on learning about due process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bacani, and the rest of the candidates for sharing your favorite law school moment. Now, the next question is again addressed to all candidates. The question is, evaluate the incumbent of the position you are running for. Were they able to fulfill the functions of the central board position? Again, evaluate the incumbent of the position you are running for. Were they able to fulfill the functions of the central board position? Let's have our candidate for third-year batch representative to answer this question. Let's start with Ms. Palaran.
Hi, good afternoon. The incumbent batch representative right now is Mr. Bam Manahan, and I think he has only been in the position for a month or so. And I think so far, he is able to do the duties and responsibilities of a batch representative well. He was already able to fulfill one of his platforms, which is to create an official batch chat. So far, he has been disseminating important information and announcements to the batch through the said chat. So I think Mr. Manahan is doing a good job as the current batch representative. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Palaran. Mr. Galinato, you have 1 minute to answer the question.
So I think the incumbent batch representative, Mr. Bamanahan, while having only served for barely a month or for around a month since his assumption into office, I think he has shown initiative and has effectively discharged his duties. So he has effectively and efficiently given the announcements necessary for the batch to be informed about. And at the same time, he took the initiative of making a timeline or a roadmap for our batch with regard to the remaining months in the academic year on how he plans to lay down his program. So there is an official Telegram group chat, which is very beneficial for the batch, especially in disseminating announcements. So I think bottom line, the incumbent batch representative has discharged the functions effectively. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Galinato. Mr. Ubaldo, you have 1 minute to answer the question.
So the incumbent for treasurer, I think he did very well, Mr. JP Chua, since I was able to see him in action in the past since the last semester. So definitely with the standards we have to hold him up for is different from the standards pre-pandemic, and so far from every GA that we've had since last semester, we've never had a problem with finances. His projects and proposals were good, and I don't think there was any problem with him fulfilling any of the functions of the central board. So overall, I'm very happy with the way that Mr. JP Chua was able to fulfill his functions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ubaldo. Mr. Bacani, you may also start answering the question.
Okay, thank you. So for SecMeg, despite the struggles of implementing the programs and initiatives of the Basic Services Committee, I do believe that the current secretary was able to fulfill her duties well. Working with SecMeg, I would like to actually thank and commend her as she was also able to adjust these initiatives of the BSC and the initiatives of the Office of the Secretary to fit and prioritize the current needs of the student. So I would like to commend SecMeg for a job well done as the secretary. Thank you.
Thank you. Now let's have Mr. Villarosa to answer the question.
All right, thanks. So the incumbent BGC rep was Jet Nicolas, and definitely, yeah, I'd say he did a really solid job. I think that if he was only like BGC rep for a term, because I think he only applied after the Elecom called again. But I think despite the very short time that he served, all correspondence, all announcements, and even getting the sensing from the students, he definitely fulfilled. I think given more time, he could have done even more, but it's really, really commendable that during that short time, he was really attentive to whatever concerns that we had. And I think he directed them to the proper authorities in the LSG for that. And yeah, I do think that Jet did a really solid job so far. And I really hope that he does end his term on a nice note. Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Buwan, you also have 1 minute to answer the question.
So the incumbent for the position I'm running for is Miss Jacqueline Batique. So I can say that I am very satisfied with with her performance in the central board. I have seen how she has worked for the past years and how she has initiated projects that benefited the working students. She has also initiated activities that were both for the academic needs and the welfare of the evening students. Also, she was very proactive in reaching out to students and communicating our concerns to the admin. And she was also very successful in initiating the evening week which allowed us to get to know the rest of the evening community. So overall, I'm very satisfied with her performance.
Thank you. Let's hear it from Mr. Vida.
The incumbent batch representative is Klein Bakani, and my personal evaluation of his term was that it was relatively decent. I think he did what he needed to do for our batch, such as address certain registration issues and formalizing the announcements, being timely with the dissemination of information throughout the batch. And I think the pain point that I'm trying to address for this year, or this coming year rather, is camaraderie in the batch. And I could understand that is a much harder task to do in first year, where we are all adjusting to the current setup and the new culture of law school. So to sum it all up, I think Mr. Bakani did a decent job.
Thank you. Mr. Libarios, you also have 1 minute to answer the question.
The incumbent batch rep that we have right now is Klein Bakani. I think that my evaluation of him is I think that he did an okay job given the circumstances that arose during our freshman year. So we had typhoon, we had the pandemic, we had the typhoon, and I think he did a job good enough that he was able to disseminate information, coordinate the efforts of our batch to help out those that were affected by the circumstances. But I think one of the areas I wish to improve on as a batch rep would be to have more events that could foster integration and to tackle the new issues that would arise that weren't present because we're now moving into the possibility of a face-to-face setup. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear it from Mr. Palma.
So our incumbent BGC evening representatives are Vico Ubaldo and Migs Hizon, and I would evaluate them as to have had a very satisfactory performance in discharging their duties as BGC evening representative. They were very on top on the information dissemination in making sure that whatever the LSG has been discussing is really to their constituents. And every time we have concerns, particularly specific student concerns, they would be on top of in making sure that these are raised to the proper offices, and they would also follow up in making sure that these are resolved timely. Thank you.
Thank you. Lastly, let's hear it from Mr. Anonas.
From the incumbent representatives, Mr. Ubaldo and Mr. Hizon, given that the BGC evening population is relatively small, but I believe that in terms of how they did their duties, how the representatives did their duties, on how they disseminated the information from the LSG was very satisfactory as well. In terms of the initiatives on a more personal level of connecting with the studentry, I believe it is an area that can be improved and worked on. Hence, it is one of my platforms that I wish to implement effectively as well. As part of our duties as BGC representatives, we can create and administer programs that will be more beneficial to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Now let's hear it from Mr. Klein Bacani running for the secretary position to answer the question. Being the incumbent freshman batch representative, were there any actual realizations of the project you presented to the batch? Again, being the incumbent freshman batch representative, were there any realizations of the projects you presented to the batch? You have 1 minute to answer the question.
Yes, hello. Thank you. So I do believe that I was able to incorporate most, if not all, of my initiatives with the current larger and college-wide initiatives of the LSG. Most of the initiatives that I raised before, there's already an existing larger initiative of the LSG, and I don't see a point in making another separate one. So I was able to merge this. So I was able to support these larger initiatives already and help the assigned CB members on this committee initiatives. When it comes to the batch, our goal in promoting batch camaraderie, actually we have this incoming LSG event called the UP Law Fiesta. So I also incorporated our plans on conducting games or our plans on conducting events that will enforce camaraderie within the batch. So I incorporated my initiatives with the larger initiative called the UP La Fiesta to also extend the reach of this event.
Apologies, but your time is up.
Okay, thank you.
Let's move forward with the next question addressed to Victor Cesar Ubaldo, running for the treasurer position. The question is, more often than not, meetings with the admin regarding LSG concerns are conducted in the morning as well as in Diliman in case of F2F. How can you ensure that you will be able to fulfill your mandate as treasurer considering that you are first working and second attending class in BGC? Again, the question is, more often than not, meetings with the admin regarding LSG concerns are conducted in the morning as well as in Diliman. So how can you ensure that you will be able to fulfill your mandate as treasurer considering that you are working and attending class in BGC? You have 1 minute to answer.
Thank you for this question. Although my work is generally 8 to 4 every day on office hours, I've been able to apply several times with my boss for me to be able to do my work in the evening or else to be able to do it over the weekend. So as long as I am fulfilling my duties in my job properly, my boss is able to allow me to be flexible in my working hours. With this, I've already asked for the continuance of my work from home setup so that I will have the most available time in fulfilling my duties. And definitely I will, with this in mind, I will be able to make time to attend meetings in the morning, even if I have to do these meetings face-to-face in the necessary premises, even if I have to go there in the venue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next question we have is addressed to Mr. Sam Anonas for BGC Evening Representative. The question is, Being a first-year student, you're running for the whole community of BGC evening students. What makes you think you can represent the community? Again, being a first-year student, you're running for the whole community of BGC evening students. What makes you think you can represent the community? You have 1 minute to answer.
Thank you for the question. Being longer in the college does not automatically translate to efficiency and better leadership. As an active student leader in college, this is not my first rodeo, and I sincerely find satisfaction in being able to help now, not only limited to my blockmates, but to the whole, and to expand it to the BGC evening constituency as well. With this being said, rest assured that I am opening my doors to the whole evening constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anonas. The third question to the last that we have is addressed to all candidates. And the question is, given the failure of elections for the number of LSG Central Board positions, how do you plan to handle LSG matters without the President, internal and external Vice President, and the PRO? Again, given the failure of elections for a number of LSG Central Board positions, how do you plan to handle LSG matters without the President, IVP, EVP, and PRO? Let's hear it from our candidate for the position of Secretary, Mr. Bacani.
Yes, thank you. So there are two things that I would like to implement due to the given failure of elections. So first is that the LSG should convene to arrange or to make a prioritization list of the tasks that will be left behind by this position. So we need to look into this. We need to look at the most important tasks first, and based on this list, we need to restructure the roles. So we need to reassign the roles of these vacant positions to the incoming members of the LSG. So paghahati-hatian muna until merong ma-assign and until magkaroon ng special elections for next semester. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bacani. Let's hear it from our candidates for the second-year batch representative position, starting with Mr. Vida.
I completely agree with Mr. Bacani's answer that there must first be an assessment of the most critical roles and roles that have to be that have to be put under the scope of the other members of the LSG. But also, I think that it is very important for those that will be elected to lead by example this semester or the next semester rather. I think it comes with a certain connotation that when you're running for an LSG position, that it's going to be stressful or it's going to be a hassle. And there's nothing that maybe some people think that you might not really get anything out of it. But I think the change should start with us or us candidates and hopefully as future members of the LSG to lead by example in showing the people and showing the other members of our college that it is something that is so worthwhile and fulfilling. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Libarios, you have 1 minute to answer the question.
Thank you. So I do agree there should be a prioritization list. But another area that I think we could try to solve the issue of the lack of manpower is that members of the LSG could act in the capacity or fulfill some of their roles and responsibilities that these open positions have. And to make sure that work isn't too difficult for most people, I think we can try, at least for our batch, we can try to tap into the block representatives and form committees and volunteer committees that would be able to provide support or provide help for these very these very important topics or tasks that need to be done in the LSG. So thank you.
Thank you. Now let's hear it from our BGC evening representative candidates. And let's start with Mr. Palma.
It's quite unfortunate that we have positions in the execom that are left vacant. But with regards to said vacancies, the the most concrete that we can do is to fill up those vacancies in accordance with with our constitution and internal rules. I also agree with what Mr. Libarius said, that we could also maximize this opportunity in creating committees involving our respective constituents through Volcors, in order to make them feel involved with regards to the process that the LSG is undergoing. And as what Mr. Luis Vida had said earlier, this is also a good opportunity to lead by example. And hopefully, since we have a lot of batch and community representatives here, we'll be able to lead by example and hopefully inspire others who will hopefully join us later in our term. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Anonas, you may now start answering.
For those positions, definitely the board will perform in its acting capacity for those specific positions. For the meantime, the board will have to come up with efficient and effective ways on how to deal with the tasks. A solution I would propose is to come up with a volunteer corps composed of volunteer students and will be headed by the members of the central board. I also believe we can also tap the block presidents with our tasks for successful collaborations to easier disseminate information and address the concerns of the UP College of Law comments and suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you. Now let's hear it from our candidate for treasurer, Mr. Ubaldo.
Hi again. So our UP Law students constitution already has provisions that tell us that those who will be in the central board will choose among themselves who will be the president, and also has provisions on how the other positions will be provided for. And so we will have to make sure that all these positions are covered by the central board. We will have to communicate very well with those who are incumbent to make sure that they communicate everything they can about the position, so that no task is left undone. We will keep communication lines with the incumbent central board, so that they can advise us properly. We will also make a resolution to ask for members of the UP Law community to run for the next special elections and to volunteer for the many tasks that the law student government will have to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Now let's have our candidates for third year batch representatives, starting with Mr. Galinato.
Thank you. So I agree with my fellow candidates. The Constitution, the UP Law Students Constitution already provides for a provision in cases where there are absences of members of the central board. So in this case, the absence is in the president, the IVP, the executive board, and the fourth year batch representative. So the incumbent central board will have to take the functions of the offices that don't have anyone performing the function. So they will be performing an acting capacity. But at the same time, this is also an opportunity to empower the block presidents and the other members of the student body in order to fill in the gaps left by the absence of the officers. For example, in cases of on the absence of a batch representative, the student government can empower block presidents in order to help facilitate the dissemination of information and concerns from the student body to the LSG. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Palaran, you also have 1 minute to answer the question.
I agree with everything that was mentioned by my fellow candidates. First is the prioritization and the division of the tasks. We need to know which tasks are the most important ones, such as registration, because all students needs to be registered. And I also agree that this is the time for us to make the UP Law community feel one and to invite them to participate more in student activities by creating volunteer groups for different activities that we may be doing. And also, I agree with tapping the block presidents from different batches to help in the dissemination of information. However, rest assured that even if we are to handle additional tasks, as your third year batch representative, it is my mandate to first and foremost serve my batch, and this will be my priority as your batch representative. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear it from our candidate for evening representative, Ms. Buwan.
So when I decided to run for this position, it was because I personally experienced the struggles of a working student. And these are the issues that were close to my heart and issues that I am familiar with. Having said that, if needed, I am prepared to step up, hopefully together with the other members of the new LSG during the transition time where there are gaps in the council. I also agree with the other proposals already mentioned that we can tap block representatives or create volunteer corps to fill in the lack of manpower. However, ultimately, as already mentioned, the goal is to lead by example and encourage the students of UP Law to step up as well and be of service to the college. I know that there are many students in the college who are equally capable of serving the LSG. Thank you.
Thank you. Lastly, let's have our candidate for BGC Day Representative, Mr. Villarosa.
All right, thanks. So I think if you're one of the last to answer in these types of questions, you don't have that much variety. Because definitely I agree with what everyone's saying, and I'm definitely on board with that. We have provisions in place. We can tap block presidents, definitely, right? But I guess if there's anything I can focus on, is just that for the people in this call who will, get the chance to be elected, the major responsibility falls on us. And because we have vacancies in the higher positions, I think all the more is there, the onus is on us to actually make our projects mean something. It's not just our usual projects when we disseminate information or we do the things we've constantly done, over the years, but we should actually do things that actually mean something to people, wherein people can actually feel that the LSG is working, so that through our earnest efforts we can tap and call somebody who's actually meant to be in that position. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. The next question submitted by the UP Law community is again addressed to all candidates. And the question is, one of the issues faced by the UP Law Scholars Committee is the lack of funds, and sometimes the stipends of the UP Law scholars come late. How can you address this and the other issues faced by our scholars? Again, one of the issues faced by the UP Law Scholars Committee is the lack of funds, and sometimes the stipends of the UP Law scholars come late. How can you address this and the other issues faced by our scholars? Let's start with our candidate for secretary, Mr. Bacani.
Hello, yes. Actually, most of these scholars are working students, so it's actually hard to convene everyone for a town hall or for a meeting together. But what we can do is to provide platforms for them to voice out their struggles and their problems when it comes to lack of funds or even the late distribution of funds. What we can do is to strengthen our communication with the administration, because it's the administration who oversees this initiative. We need to ensure that the administration understands what is really happening on ground, what is really happening. Why we need to ask them why, bakit nalilate, bakit nalilate yung pag-distribute, bakit nagkukulang ng funds. And with this, we should demand the administration to ensure na on time lahat nung parts ng initiative na to.
Your time is up.
Thank
Thank you, Mr. Bacani. Let's have Mr. Ubaldo.
For this question, yes, definitely we must be able to maintain a good line of communication with all our scholars. Perhaps a direct line of communication with any central board member would be good, or else a dedicated board member to communicate with them on a regular basis. And we must also coordinate very well with the administration and inform them of the current status of our law scholars, especially when they lack funds or their funds are coming in late. We will see to it if it's imperative for us to be able to provide in the meantime or support them in any way that we can as part of the LSG through other means of funds. But besides this, to be able to also ask an accounting from the admin on what are their concrete plans for our UP Law scholars. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear it from Mr. Villarosa.
All right. So I think preliminary, my first instance would be this is more of an admin thing because I think the best that we can do as student leaders would be to coordinate with them and really push them. Hey, can you like release the funds, especially if you guys need it already? But I think what I can contribute that's different from what other LSGs have done in the past of just communicating is probably we can have our own projects to like fundraising activities wherein we get the talents of our batchmates and school and people in school, and maybe have a fair we can sell particular items. Also thinking of tapping alumni, for instance. That's why one of my platforms for BGC is we just had our pioneer batch. Maybe they can contribute something as a classroom or even um, scholarship fund, for somebody who's deserving, right? And maybe even partner with organizations for us to pool the particular fund. But at the end of the day, I think it's really us trying to find a way to push admin to disseminate the cash faster and more efficiently. Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Buwan, you also have 1 minute to answer the question.
Okay, first we need to identify where the delay is coming from. So if it's from manpower, then we can assist the scholarship committee through volunteer course. If it is through the lack of funds, then we can assist them through looking for more donors for the program or through fundraisers, as already mentioned. But ultimately, what we need is open communication with the committee in order to identify the concern, where the delay is coming from, and to come up with solutions on how we can assist them. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear it from Mr. Vida.
While I'm not completely familiar with the admin matters, I will have to defer to the others that have already been in LSG in agreeing that this may be an admin matter mostly. But on the part of a future second year batch representative, one of the plans in my platform is to have a donation drive that can be left open to the whole batch. So this donation drive mainly was supposed to be for books, but can be open to other resources. And the aim is to address the needs of the students that are struggling. And I think it's a very solid way to address this problem indirectly because it's not in the form of financial donations, but more on books, which can cost a lot at times. And another idea that can be done is through simple batch solicitation. And this was already included supposedly in my general plan of action, but this is not only to be funded to fund the batch activities, but the financial assistance to the students in need.
Thank you. Mr. Libarios, you also have 1 minute to answer.
Hi, thank you. So, my initial thoughts about this issue is at first, I think we need to we need to figure out what the cause of this delay is, so that we can properly come up with a good solution that could solve this problem of the delay. I think another way that we could try to resolve this issue is maybe we can cut the red tape. So maybe for the people who are in need of scholarships, they could directly coordinate with their sponsor instead of coming through the administration. And I'm not too familiar with how that could go, but I think that's an idea that we could explore. So in sum though, however, I think that the best resolution right now, the best short-term resolution is just open communication with the school or with the sponsor so that we can figure out what the best way we can prevent and solve the delays that are happening right now for these scholars. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Libarios. Let's have Mr. Palma to answer the question.
Yeah, completely agree with what everyone said, that the first thing to really do about this issue is to identify what's the cause of the delay or the lack of funds. And as mentioned, that this is an admin issue, and the best we can do as members of the LSG is to provide an avenue where we can have a dialogue between the admin and the committee specifically concerned, and our stakeholders such as our scholars. So this way we would be able to identify which part of the issue really needs to be resolved. On the other hand, as LSG, we could also provide another avenue, or I guess opportunities, not only to our current scholars but also to other members of the law student body we're in, we could also coordinate with the university office of scholarships to provide for other financial assistance or scholarships to our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Palma. Mr. Anonas, you may start answering the question.
From my point of view, what I suggest is to lobby and work with the administration, closely coordinating with the scholars, with the respective officials. By having a direct communication between these parties, this would be able to address the cause of the delays, especially with the financial strains that the pandemic has dealt us all. I would also come up with an easier inventory log of all available scholarships from public and private groups, with regular updates that are easily accessible to the constituency, to broaden their choices as well. Because as representatives of the constituency, the concerns of the scholars are also ours. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear it from Miss Palaran.
First, I think that we have to gather data. Who has not received their stipend? How many scholars are affected? And how long is the gap from the promised release and the day that and the present day? With this data, we can show the intensity and the effect of the delay of release of stipends. With this, we will communicate this and convey this to the administration to show them why timely release is important. And I think constant communication and constant reminder is very important because they're also swamped with a lot of stuff, so this might be out of their sight and forget about it. So we need to constantly remind them about it. Also, to address the lack of funds, I think that we can increase donation drives from the UP Law alumni community because they have always been there to support the current UP Law students. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Palaran. Lastly, let's hear it from Mr. Galinato. You may start answering the question.
Thank you. So first, we have to know whether or not there are existing students who have yet to receive their stipends, and if there are, we have to lobby to the administration to expedite the release of these funds because it is really a burden for the scholars that they have to look for other sources of funding when they themselves have applied for scholarships because they need the funding in order to pursue law school. Second would be to closely coordinate with the scholarship committee in order to understand the root cause of this problem. Why is there a delay? We have to reevaluate the process flow as to why there is a delay in the release of funds. So as what my fellow candidates have said, we have to find the root cause of the problem and see whether or not this could be because of the red tape. And lastly, as what my fellow candidates has also said, maybe we can also tap into other sources of funding. We can tap into the alumni in order to augment the funding for the scholars. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. For our last question, this is addressed to all candidates. And the question is, who are you voting for as President and Vice President of the Philippines and why? Again, who are you voting for as President and Vice President of the Philippines and why? Let's start with Mr. Bacani.
Hello everyone. So I'm definitely voting for the Lenny Kiko tandem. Una sa lahat, sa gobyernong tapat, aangat buhay lahat. So Lenny Robredo was able to provide a service that is science-based and encompassing of everyone. Also, her track record is clean and definitely she's the only candidate with that track record. One of the manifestation is the 3-year highest OVP rating, COA rating, audit rating of the OVP. That is a clear manifestation of her clean track record. Second, why I'm voting for Kiko, I came from the provinces where most communities resort to agricultural activities, and I am definitely sure that Kiko will champion the needs and the welfare of the farmers. So that's why I'm voting for Lenny Kiko. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ubaldo, you have 1 minute to answer the question.
I am voting for Lenny Robredo for president and Kiko Pangilinan for vice president. For Lenny, it's been well established in the healthcare community that she has been very present, especially during the pandemic, where she was able to help those who had COVID concerns, and especially those who were infected, and also help those frontline healthcare workers get to their respective places. So that's very established amongst the healthcare community. As for Kiko Pangalinan, from everything I've seen so far, I agree with his plans, especially when it comes to helping those in the agricultural sector, especially the farmers who were able to voice out their support of him. I think he did a very good job, even though he hadn't had a prolific, we hadn't, even though we could still use more of his projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Galinato, you may start answering the question.
Thank you. So I will also be voting for, as for President Lenny Robredo and for Vice President Kiko Pangilinan. For Lenny Robredo, she has exhibited a clear and clean track record with no allegation of corruption. She promotes transparency and provides well thought out solutions to existing issues and problems in the Philippines. For Kiko Pangilinan, his track record has always been to help the farmers, the fisher folk. Both tandem, I think, will give life to the provision in the Constitution where we have to implement social justice in all phases of national development. So I think with the state of the Philippines, with high rates of poverty, with high unemployment, and with the plight of the farmers and the fisher folk and the urban poor, we really need leaders who ensure and go out of their way in order to better the lives of these sectors in society. So it is a necessity for us really to promote the rights of these farmers, fisher folk, and urban poor. That is why I'm voting for the Lenny Kiko tandem in the upcoming elections. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Palaran?
Hello. I am also voting for the Lenny Kiko tandem for the upcoming national elections. As seen during the pandemic, our Vice President has been really present. She has been trying to help. She has been helping various sectors during the pandemic, and then even prior to the pandemic, she has also been instituting housing programs in far-flung areas. She tries, even without much power, she tries her best to really create projects for the Filipino people. And for Vice President, it would be Kiko Pangilinan because as seen by his track record, he has performed his responsibilities well. He was able to really help our Filipino farmers. And with both experience and track record of the Tropa tandem, I think that they would do good as President and Vice President of the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Palaran. Let's hear it from Mr. Libarios.
Hello. I will also be voting for the Lenny Kiko tandem. For Lenny Robredo and her group, I think they embody the type of leadership that I admire. I think for years, Lenny Robredo has shown, put her service. For years, she's been going out to far-flung areas and providing aid and support. And in this pandemic, she's also been exercising and promoting projects that really help the Filipino people. And at the core of her campaign, at the core of the projects that she puts love for the Filipino people and love for fellow human beings. And I think that's the type of leadership that I want to see. So I will be voting for them because they embody the type of Philippines that I want to see. Kaya kulay rosas ang bukas. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Libarios. Let's have Mr. Vida.
For president, I am voting for Lenny Robredo because she's the most qualified person to run for the position. And she's also clearly a very good person based on reports and based on what is portrayed in the media. And I find her to be an underdog in Philippine politics. She's someone that does not really enjoy the same name recall that other presidential candidates of recent memory have certainly enjoyed. And this, in my opinion, is relatively unprecedented in the Philippines for such a position. And it's something I'd want to see come to fruition given her platforms. And for vice president, I will vote for Kiko Pangilinan in the spirit of being one with his tandem with Vice President Lenny Robredo.
Thank you, Mr. Vida. Let's hear it from Ms. Buwan.
I am voting for Mayor Isko Moreno for president. I started working with the mayor under the mayor's campaign last year because I believe in his platforms. As a resident of Manila, I saw how Manila has improved under his term. I have also personally benefited from the COVID programs that he introduced in Manila when the pandemic started. I will vote for him because I believe in his platform and I have seen his concrete accomplishments. For Vice President, I am voting for his partner, Dr. Willie Ong, because I believe SCO needs his support in order to fulfill the visions of the country, his visions for the country. That being said, although I do not agree with some of his positions, I still believe in his platforms and his vision, and I will still hold him accountable when needed. Having said that, my work is separate from me as a person and my platforms. I am here as an evening student who has experienced the same struggles as you have. My platform was formed through consultations with fellow evening students, and I hope to get your support so that we can work together in pushing for these initiatives for the evening community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Buan. Mr. Villarosa, you have 1 minute to answer the question.
All right. So for me, definitely, like a lot of us here, Lenny Kiko are my president and vice president bets for the election. But I think the most important reason why I'm voting for them, and I think this comes with with every other candidate. There's never a guarantee that the person whom we want to win will actually be the person that uh, will be true to what they say and will actually uh, work in the manner that they propose to be, diba? But the thing I like about Lenny and Kiko is that they're willing to be held accountable. They're willing to tell people that, okay, we're not perfect and we'll be making a lot of mistakes along the way if ever we do win. But what's the most important thing is we're open to criticism and we're willing and open to improve. Particularly back in 2016, actually, Lenny signed this waiver for the ombudsman to check her financial documents. And I think at that time I was really impressed and I was like, okay, this person is willing to have a waiver of the bank secrecy law and willing to coordinate with government. And I think that was very, very influential. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Villarosa. Now let's hear it from Mr. Anonymous.
I'm voting for the Lenny Kiko tandem dahil si Lenny ay malinis, marangal at may prinsipyo. The values that she and her team have shown throughout their careers, and especially during the pandemic, have showcased their capability to have a gobyernong tapat. Being clean, honest, and having utmost principles is something that I have inculcated in myself, in my career, in my law school, and as a future lawyer. The leadership and service that they have shown are what makes me believe that they will be a good president and vice president for the Filipino people. Kailan ni tayo. Thank you.
Thank you. Now let's hear it from Mr. Palma to end the question and answer portion of this convocation.
Actually, I'm considering no kidding. It's no question. I'm voting for Lenny Kiko. And it comes as maybe as a cliche at this point, especially we've had the recent survey where the majority of the law student body is voting for Lenny Kiko. And my co-candidates have already said why, since based on their track record, values and principles that they stand for, or their specific plans for our country. And I guess what I'd like to add on a more personal note, that if if it's any of the candidates who could actually inspire people to give their trust back to the government, to actually believe in good governance again, it would be Lenny and Kiko. And I hope that we, as your future LSG members, be able to emulate how they embody service, how they would embody services for the Filipino people, and we would also inspire law students to trust in their LSG again. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Before we end, the candidates will be given an opportunity for his or her closing spiel, for which they will have 1 minute to deliver. Again, let us call on our candidate for Secretary, Cavendel Klein Bacani.
Again, good afternoon to everyone. So when it comes to our platform, especially in championing a safe and equitable resumption of classes, we should be supported by data coming directly from the students. It is the students who know and understand best the situation they're currently facing. That is why together, we will aspire and work for an LSG that will be as immersive as it can be, by encouraging and spearheading discussions within the batches and the blocks, and by being sensitive enough and more grounded to the hardships of the students. If I'll be given the opportunity to be your next LSG secretary, rest assured again that my vote in the LSG will be informed by and cast toward the students' interest. Kaya ilalaban natin ang isang LSG na magiging kakampi sa mga sakuna at pagsubok na dala ng pandemya, kaagapay sa sama-samang pag-angat tungo sa ligtas na pagbabalik eskwela, at LSG na kaugnay ng mga estudyante sa anumang sulok ng bansa. Muli, ako po si Klein Bahani, your next LSG Secretary. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you. Let's have our candidate for Treasurer, Victor Cesar Ubaldo.
Good afternoon again. Thank you for this opportunity to be able to share our platforms and to be able to answer your questions. So I am, as your next LSG treasurer, I plan to really do my best in order to perform all the functions. I've had I've had past experiences in being treasurer in different organizations, and I'm really excited to be able to share all my skills and experiences in order to help serve the UP Law community. And this is really the reason why I want to run again for the law student government, which is really to be in service of the UP Law community. I think it's best that we really give the most of ourselves and just offer everything that we have, because it's this way that we just that we keep in mind the service of our constituents, that we will be truly be able to help one another in the UP Law community. So again, thank you for this opportunity, and God bless.
Thank you. Next is our candidate for third-year batch representative, Noel Francis Galinato.
The role of the batch representative is important to ensure that we give life to the policy that no student gets left behind. As your next batch representative, I will work with you to give our batch a more hopeful and brighter future in UP Law. I invite you to like and follow my Facebook page, Coco Galinato, for third-year batch representative, and I look forward to seeing you during my room-to-room campaigns. Once again, hashtag CocoCrunch, consolidating basic services, facilitating reintegration, building a unified batch, encouraging network development, and promoting collaborative communication and holistic development. Serbisyong walang pagkukulang. Coco Galinato for third-year batch representative. Tara, galingan natin to. Daghang salamat, UP Law.
Thank you. Let's have our candidate for third-year batch representative, Michiko Pearl Palaran.
To address the concerns that we are facing as your batch representative, I propose to you MIA. M, Mass Awareness and Communication. I, Integration of the batch. And A, Adapting to the New Normal. For M, Mass Awareness and Communication, I plan to release a primer which will contain guidelines, processes, contact details of relevant offices. Have a grievance form to serve as a communication channel for students' needs and concerns. I, Integration of the batch. Let's have a Humans of Batch 2024, where we will feature at least 2 batchmates in a month. For A, Adapting to the New Normal, let's make it easy for everyone. Provide the list of private insurance providers that are affordable and enumerate the requirements in applying for PhilHealth. Let's have a talk with upperclassmen where they can share with us their F2F experiences. Please check fb.com/Mia for 3PR to see more about my platforms. UP Law Batch 2024, huwag mag-alala dahil kaya with Mia.
Thank you. Next is our candidate for second-year batch representative, Rowan Victor Libarios II.
Hi, everyone. Once again, I'm RV Libarios, running as one of your second-year batch representatives. For our batch, I envision that we can recover, have some variety in law school, and learn together. Recover as one through inclusive programs to address our issues and moving back to face-to-face and online classes. Have some variety through integration events and games where we can interact with our batch and other batches, and learn as one with the help of our seniors that I hope we can also pass down to the freshmen coming in next year. I'm hoping for your vote of support as we enter into our second year and experience either one more year of the online setup or our first year of face-to-face classes. I hope you like and support my upcoming pubs and room-to-room campaigns. Don't worry, RV there for you. Thank you everyone and have a great day.
Thank you. Let's have our candidate for second year batch representative, Luis Enrique Vida.
Good afternoon again, everyone. I'm Luis Vida, running to be your next second year batch representative. To add to my final points and why I think camaraderie and collaboration are the biggest pain points of our batch, I present this question. Everyone wants to be successful in law school, but what's the point of being successful if you can't do it as one? I'm not here to present you false and idealistic promises for our batch, but rather on the credibility and intention that I bring. I'm just like you, navigating my way through law school in its different phases, and I hope that you're able to trust in the passion and competence that I bring to the table. This is not my campaign, this is ours. It's time to champion a new era of collaboration and camaraderie. Once again, let's be the best batch we can be together. Let's all vote Vida, the champion for camaraderie and collaboration.
Thank you. Next is our candidate for evening representative, Madeline Krija Buwan.
Thank you, Alicom. Thank you to everyone listening. With the uncertainty of the shift to face-to-face classes, the evening students need a representative who understands these issues and who will listen to them. Let's do this together with a fresh perspective. F, face-to-face classes in the new normal. R, responsive registration process. E, evening students' welfare. S, solid evening and UP law community. And H, highlighted open communication. There is still 1 week left in the campaign season, and I am looking forward to meeting the evening community and listening to your concerns. Again, I am Iya Buwan, your next evening representative. Together, let's start fresh with Iya. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's have our candidate for BGC Day representative, Lance Ryan Villarosa.
All right, thanks. Culture. That's the dream. I really want to create a culture in BGC. That we're more than just an extension campus. That people actually can be more than just law students. We're law students who care for people inside school, your batch, your seniors, your juniors, but at the same time, people who are also outside the school. And that's why if you look at my platform, it's all about outreach activities per year level on platforms that cover a variety of advocacies, creating a centralized ACADS drive that seniors to freshmen can rely on so that people are confident that they really do belong in UP Law. At the end of the day, I just really feel that there's so much we can do in the position that we have. And I know that there's only so much we can do in a year, but definitely what we can do is create a foundation for years to follow and even improving it for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is our candidate for BGC Evening Representative, Samuel Joseph Anonas.
Let's get it done. This is the time to deliver. This is the place to commit. And yes, there will still be many obstacles, but it is up to us to overcome them. And it definitely is doable. If elected, I'll be able to serve as a student leader once again and will be able to cater the needs of our constituents by implementing programs not only for each student's welfare, but the BGC Evenings community welfare as well. Looking forward to meeting each and every one of you during the room-to-room campaigns and hoping for your support. Once again, hashtag sama-sama tayo, hashtag Samanonas for BGC Evening Representative, ready to lead, ready to serve. A stronger, united BGC Evening community for UP Law. Maraming salamat po.
Lastly, let's have our candidate for BGC Evening Representative, Rowan Palma.
So we are currently in what could be a peculiar moment in history. As we are in the middle of ushering in a new administration, we are simultaneously preparing for the return of face-to-face activities. So this introduces a new level of uncertainty coupled with concerns that would be unique to the working law student. But in spite of this backdrop, I firmly believe that we in the BGC Eve community are more than capable to face all of these head on. And I'm looking forward to all of us working together as we build a well-prepared BGC Eve community, one that is ready to adapt and respond to the uncertainties in the new normal and post-elections. So hopefully when polls open, you'd be reassured that we'll be able to navigate through the next AY as long as you row your vote. Again, this is Ro Palma, your BGC Eve representative, and see you BGC Eve blocks this week in the Zoom to Zoom campaigns where I will be sharing my plans for a strong, independent BGC Eve community. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. That's it for our LSG Central Board candidates. But before we end today's convocations, let's hear it from some of the candidates for the USC elections. Joining us is Stand UP. You may begin.
Mula sa Tunay, Palaban, Makabayan.
Student Alliance for the Advancement of Democratic Rights in UP.
Stand UP.
Mga scholar ng bayan, narito na ang inyong susunod ng University Student Council.
CHK. From the College of Human Kinetics, I am Yusuf Babate.
Mula sa UP Diliman Extension Program in Pampanga, ako si Ira Isabel Ortiz.
Mula sa Kolehiyo ng Arte at Literatura, ako si Cyril Ainzen Cyril Salazar.
And Catherine Kate Silvia.
Taas ka mong pagbati mula sa Kolehiyo ng Kampalipunan ng Filosofiya, ako si Don Alejandro Neo Aison at kami ang inyong USC Counselors.
Rise and shine from the College of Science. I am Shine Reyes, your USC Vice Chairperson.
Mula naman sa makasaysayang pagkilos, ako si Latrell Felix from the College of Social Sciences and Philosophy, ang inyong susunod na USC Chairperson.
Higit 2 taon sa pandemya, nakita natin kung gaano lumala yung krisis na hinaharap nating mga Pilipino. Kaya sa nalalapit na eleksyon, kailangan nating patampukin ang panawagan ng batayang masa. Atin nang isulong ang people's agenda at sama-sama tayong kumilos para sa pinapangarap na bukas.
Suporta bago medalya para sa mga atleta. Sa pagbabalik ng UAAP, handa na ba ang lahat? Kasi ako, oo. Let's stand up stronger para mapalakas ang dagundong sa genuine student-athlete representation at ligtas na balik training.
Sa gitna ng mga lumalalang krisis panlipunan at pangkalusugan, isinulong natin sa pamantasan ang mga kampanya tulad ng Move the SEM, Academic Ease, Ligtas na Balik Eskwela at Defend Academic Freedom. Patuloy ang laban natin para sa mga batayan at demokratikong karapatan ng sangka-estudyantihan. Pag-asa ng bayan, stand up stronger para sa mga bayan, siyentipiko at makamasang edukasyon.
Patuloy ng lantaran na kapalpakan ng Estado na pangalagaan ng kapakanan ng ating mga komunidad. Patuloy ang pagtindig ng mga pag-asa ng bayan at komunidad upang isulong ang kanilang mga karapatan. Laban sa mahigit na 2 taon na kapalpakan ng Estado para sa ayudang sapat, makatarungang kabuhayan at pamamahay, solusyon para sa oil price hike at ang pagtigil ng pag-atake para sa mga komunidad. Pag-asa ng bayan, stand up stronger para sa ayudang sapat at makatarungang tirahan at hanap buhay para sa mga komunidad.
Tapangan ng paglikha, tapangan ng pagsusulit ng sining ng malaya sa tulangan sa hirap sa pag-aalap ng pinasyal at mga banta laban sa ating buhay. Kita na nananatiling huli sa prioridad ang sektor ng sining. Kaya naman, let's stand up stronger para sa isang malaya at demokratikong espasyo para sa bawat artista ng bayan.
Sa ilalim ng rehimeng Duterte, lumala lamang ang pang-aresto, pang-abuso, pamamaslang at red tagging maging sa ating universidad. Pero hinding-hinding ng patinag ang ating komunidad sa mga atakeng ito. Kaya ngayong nariyan ang banta ng pasismo sa itsura ng tambalang Marcos Duterte sa halalan, ang tugon ng sambayanan at ng mga pag-asa ng bayan. Stand up stronger laban sa tiraniya at diktadura.
Magkalayo man tayo sa isa't isa na ipakita natin ang ating kolektibong lakas sa harap ng mga isyong panlipunan. Tumulong tayo kasamang iba't ibang konseho katulad ng LSG sa laban ng Ligtas na Balik Eskwela at Defend UP. Tumandig tayo sa iba't ibang sektor through UP Kasarian, Malaya UPD, Diliman Rights Watch at Save Our Schools Network at pinatampol natin ang ating mga panawagan sa kauna-unahang remote UP Fair. Sa paglikha natin ng kasaysayan, salubungin natin ang pinapangarap na bukas ng mas malakas at kasing kulay ng rosas. Pag-asa ng bayan, stand up stronger for more unities and greater heights for our democratic rights.
Tunay ngang marami na tayong napagtagumpayan gawa ng ating kolektibong pagkilos. Ngunit hindi doon natatapos ang laban dahil ipapanalo pa natin ang kulay rosas na bukas. Kaya papatunayan natin mga kabataan ang kakayahan nating maglingkod at tumindig ngayong halalan kasama ng malawak na hanin ng masa, no? Upang isulong, no, ang mga kampanyang nagsusulong ng karapatan, hustisya at makataong pamamahala. Kaya naman mga pag-asa ng bayan, let us stand up stronger upang tutulan ang tambalang Marcos Duterte at palakasin ang kampanyang masa ngayong halala. Kaya naman po ang hamon ng Stand UP ngayong taon.
Para sa pangarap na bukas, maglingkod, manindigan.
Pag-asa ng bayan, stand up stronger.
Now we're opening the floor for any questions.
There were no questions submitted to the Google form, but we would like to thank you for your time. And thank you everyone who joined us today. If you weren't able to catch the start of the program, this convocation will still be available on our YouTube channel. Just a few reminders, as per resolution number 2021-018 of the UP Law Electoral Commission, we would like to reiterate that students at the UP Iloilo are qualified to vote for these coming general elections. Iloilo evening students may vote for the evening representative position. Candidates, please take note that the campaign ban will start next Saturday, April 30. And for the electorate, make sure to cast your vote during the election proper, which will take place beginning on May 2, Monday, up to May 8, Sunday. And with that, we end our convocation for the general elections for the Law Student Government for the academic year 2022 to 2023. Thank you, everyone.